good morning all. How are we all doing?
Good afternoon here, but great.
That's right, good afternoon. Sorry, yeah, I always manage to do something wrong at the start of these interviews. Well, just to put this in context, I'm here with my co-author and co-thinker, Jane Daly, and with somebody who we recently met, a wonderful leader, educator, Rachel Tomlinson from the UK. And we met through a mutual friend, didn't we? Through Shona Pilgrim, who is a director of learning at an organization called World Education. Am I correct there? Is that the right title?
Whole Education.
Whole Education, absolutely. Yeah. So I think, Rachel, maybe if we start off there, because your school is actually a part of Whole Education.
Yeah.
What is Whole Education?
So it's a network of I guess like-minded schools on a subscription basis. So Whole Education is the three aims of Whole Education are they're much more detailed than this, but it is about providing a whole education for the children in our care. So so it's a subscription network of schools right across the UK, and Whole Education provide different types of support and training and kind of pastoral support, I guess, for leaders as well within that network to promote the idea of a whole education.
Can you give me a bit of a glimpse into that? Because schools in the UK, like they are places all around the world, are pretty well structured into what and how they teach. So what is it, in a very practical sense, what would be the difference? Let's go to your school. What are the differences that you try to bring from other, perhaps, schools?
So I think for us, it's about looking at, I think the basis of our national curriculum is there. And I think it's, I listen to and read a lot of Guy Claxton's work, and Guy Claxton often talks about curriculum plus, or the attainment plus model. And I think that really is it for us, because the kind of your national curriculum is your baseline measure. And then I think it's all the other stuff on top of the national curriculum for me that is the difference.
And so, can you give me if I were to come into your school, what are the structures that you have in place upon which you build that plus?
Okay, so I think we talk a lot in our school about the fact that we have 4 pillars. So first of all, our school logo is learn to love, love to learn. And I think the 2 bits of that are equally important and equally balanced, actually, in terms of our provision. So I'll come back to the learn to love bit, but the love to learn part of that, we talk about 4 pillars for us in our curriculum, of which the national curriculum is one. So I guess, you know, that's what I'm saying, that the national curriculum, it's law, it's what we do, it's, you know, it's the basis of most of the work that we do, like every other school in the UK, every other maintained school in the UK. And so the first pillar, national curriculum. Our second pillar is something that we've designed based on Guy Claxton's work, and we call that rounded and grounded. And it's a set of characteristics or skills or metacognitive skills and attributes that we want to promote in our children. And we talk about those really explicitly with our children, but also really implicitly throughout our curriculum. The third pillar are the Sustainable Development Goals. Because all the qualifications in the world are fabulous, but only if you've got a planet to live on, and food to eat and air to breathe. And the fourth pillar are the rights of the child. So on those 4 pillars, we build our curriculum, and our curriculum is a project-based learning curriculum. So it has all of those elements intertwined, and our teaching staff are incredible at crafting really fantastic projects for our children that enable them to not only have the national curriculum learning, but to become what I call good humans. I talk about good humaning quite a lot as our intention for our children, where they understand their agency in creating positive change locally or more widely. And I guess that's the systems that we've got in place that kind of underpin all of those things, really.
Project-based learning. So I'm assuming then that would allow the learning to be personalized to the interests of the students. Can you give me an example of a project? I mean, is the project decided upon by the student, by the teacher, by the school? How does that work? What does it look like? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, there's elements of all of those things. One of when we start thinking about our long-term curriculum, obviously we have national curriculum objectives to meet and content that we have to build in and make sure. And so when we are crafting our projects, we look at, obviously the national curriculum is part of that conversation. But then we look at the children who we have in the cohort, what their particular interests are, you know, whether it's boy heavy or girl heavy, or, you know, it's really obvious, isn't it, with some cohorts what's going to float the boat really, and what they're interested in. And we also look at what's happening in the world around us right then, and make those projects really kind of really coherent with the children's understanding of the world and what's going on around them. So as an example of that, at the moment, one of our projects I'm just trying to think which one to talk about, because I could talk about them all, but one of our projects at the moment is about vulture. Well, it's not about vultures, but the question, because they're all question led, so the idea is that the children answer the question really towards the end of the project with some kind of social action or movement or just informing really. And so their question is, why are vultures important, and why is the vultures dying? Why is vultures dying important? And when we unpick that, and when we've kind of planned that as a project for the children, we use a mantle of the expert approach as well, where we create imaginary worlds for our children in which they are the experts and they are acting as the experts. So in this project, they are acting as the experts for an organisation that is concerned about the plight of the vultures and what's happening, because we know that vultures are dying at a rate that's never been happening before. So the children are the experts at investigating why that's happening. And of course, in that there's lots of learning there. There's lots of, all hits lots of the national curriculum buttons, but it also talks eventually, we're leading towards eventually the ecological environmental considerations of, why vultures are dying. It's because they're being poisoned by pesticides and medicines and all of those kinds of things. And the wider impact of that is, if vultures aren't there to clean up the environment of carcasses of dead animals, then actually the environment really suffers as well. So it's we're going into a spiral of a disastrous spiral really for the environment. So it's all linked very tightly back to the Sustainable Development Goals and extinction, and how our human behaviours can impact widely the environment when we don't really think about our actions. So so that's our year 3 children. So our year 3 children are 7 and 8 years old. So it's kind of a really big, really big thing for them to be thinking about at quite a young age.
Is. On a practical level, I should have opened with that. Whereabouts is your school?
So we're in the northwest of England, in Lancashire.
Okay, and the age of your children?
So we are a primary school, 4 to 11.
4 to 11. So this approach, how do you think, can you give some examples of how that impacts on children's learning, some specific ways in which children respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think that there's, it's about the advocacy of our children. Our children are advocating really heavily now. There's an enhanced awareness in our children about the fact that we are living in a climate emergency, and a really balanced understanding of that. We're not sending our children into a panic, but we are really thinking about our place as humans in that climate emergency and what we can do to stop that. So our children are massive advocates for all the small actions that we can take as individuals and collectively to slow down what's happening in terms of climate change. And they advocate at home about that, and I think that's a real thing. Our parents now are much more aware. When you talk to our parents, they know that our children here are much more aware than friends' children, or children that are in their family, because they have that real understanding of that from school. And it's not just the understanding of it, it's the agency behind it as well. So advocating for small changes at home. But we also do things locally. So we've worked with local groups about rewilding and planting, and the things that we're consuming as a school. They petitioned our school kitchen. Our school kitchen would use disposable containers. So they petitioned our school kitchen to stop that happening, so our school kitchen's more sustainable. So there's all kinds of quite small but then quite big action. They will write to politicians, they'll write to organizations to stop different things happening. I think a couple of years ago we were learning about palm oil in one of the rooms, so they were talking to Nestle about that. The things like children will raise money. We did a project again, I think it was year twos, did a project where they looked at Malala and Malala Yousafzai and the work that Malala Yousafzai was doing, and about the importance of education, linked again to Sustainable Development Goals and the rights of the child, the right to an education and the right for gender equality. And we're doing all kinds of things to raise awareness of the importance of equality in education. And I remember vividly showing a visit around and saying, going into this particular classroom and saying, what are you learning in here? And this little dot of a girl, when it launched into this explanation of how important it was that girls all around the world could go to school, and and we were doing this, and we're going to do this, and I think they were raising money for the Malala Fund at the time, and she went, and it doesn't matter, because if all we raise is enough for one girl to go to school, that's enough. And she was like, the passion that was in her voice, which was so right, it was phenomenal, really.
That is phenomenal. Yeah. It leads on to my next question. When I go into schools and into classrooms, one of the things that I'm very much attuned to is, I always think of Maxine Green, her concept of awakeness, right? And that's what I'm always looking for. And you don't always see it in every classroom or in every school, and you can sort of sense it. Do you think this approach that you're taking, do you get a sense of that awakeness within the classrooms, within the staff, within the community? Yeah,
I think because it's there is a bigger. I think I'm struggling to articulate myself now. Just give me a minute to collect my thoughts. I think because we know that there is kind of a bigger goal, really, because it's more than just about filling our children with knowledge. It's about creating people who will change, who will go on and change our world. And I don't like talking about legacy, really, but for our staff and our parents to know that there are hundreds of children going, for us, coming through our school and going into different settings and different contexts, and eventually into workplaces, and and challenging and pushing back on norms that are just happening because no one's ever challenged them, and making those really small changes, or in some cases really huge changes, and potentially even becoming system leaders. That's kind of, that gives us the energy as a staff team, and certainly our parents feel that as well, that it's really, they talk about how exciting it is that our children have that really wide knowledge and can go home and talk to parents and grandparents and kind of go, well, no, that's not all right, because, and you really understand what's going on in, at an appropriate level, what's going on in the news, and kind of really talk about that knowledgeably. And all of those things. So absolutely. And I think for our children to be able to go home and influence adults, and and actually influence adults and actually have change, absolutely, they're really engaged in all of that learning, because they know that it's, it's not just stuff, it's stuff that matters.
Yeah, and I think by handing over the power to them, the control to them, by making, as you call it, the mantle of the experts, making the children responsible for that, I think that's a powerful way of awakening them and making it matter, because if it doesn't matter, then why are we doing it?
Yeah.
Rachel, I ask this question to everybody I meet. I've been asking it for years, and I'm going to unashamedly steal your answer in the next book.
Okay.
It's this: if you were given a magic wand, and you may find yourself repeating things because you've actually, I think, spoken. I can almost anticipate what you're going to say, but I won't. If you were given a magic wand and a blank slate to reimagine a learning environment in which the seeds of brilliance that lie within everybody are allowed to flourish, what would be one or two of the foundational characteristics, unshakable characteristics of that learning environment for you?
I think I'm going to revert back to we talked about our school kind of vision and value statement, which is learn to love, love to learn. And I think I'm going to revert to that first element of that about learn to love. And I think that in that lies some of the foundations of really solid, safe, loving relationships between adults and children that allow children to really learning in a really safe place. And I think having access to adults, so for me, if waving my magic wand, I would fill our school and have filled our school with adults who really care about children, who are really bothered about children, who really understand what creating a safe context for our children to learning feels like. If that's in place, then actually you can almost do anything with that. I think.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Well, I tell you what, you've inspired me now. So I really would like to follow this up when next I'm in the UK and come with my camera and go around.
Oh, would love for you to come and visit.
That would be really, really interesting. Thank you. Jane, do you have any questions of Rachel?
I'm not able to formulate any of them right now, but it's wonderful to hear all the different things that you're doing with your school. And I totally agree about the part, having adults that literally actually care about the children and the children themselves, and not simply the grades they're making or what they're learning. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it is indeed. Rachel, I'm sure this will be the first of many conversations. Thank you so much for taking the time.
No, it's a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
We'll talk again. Bye now. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, Rachel. Bye now. Bye.